Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program. This is Daily Politics, your go-to destination for everything politics, policy, and governance. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you most kindly for joining us on the program. Tonight, we focus on the state of the nation and the widening disconnect between government policies and the realities faced by everyday Nigerians. With an economic slowdown tightening its grip, the gap between the policy intentions of the government and their impact on the people has become a critical concern. To help us unpack and navigate these issues and to explore actionable solutions, we're joined by Engineer Yabagi, an oil industry expert and public affairs commentator with deep insight into Nigeria's energy and policy landscape. Also joining the conversation tonight is Terfa Abraham. He's a seasoned economist with a keen understanding of the nation's fiscal dynamics. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on the program. I must say we're going to start the conversation with Mr. Terfa Abraham. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Nice to be here.
Let's start this way. We all understand the precarious nature of the current situation in the country. And for the most part, everything hinges on how well the economy is doing. And I think it's safe to say the economy has not been doing well for quite some time, even more so at this current moment. What is your understanding of the correlation between how bad the economy is doing and how people, ordinary Nigerians, feel as if nothing is happening at all?
Okay, so generally, by economic growth figures, the economy is growing very slowly. So the progress may not be as desirable, but there's evidence that the economy, real GDP is growing, is increasing. However, the impact or effect on the welfare of people is not showing as GDP figure reveals.
And now, is that common? Is that natural?
Yeah, it's common because real GDP growth is a short-term phenomenon. To impact on poverty, on cost of on quality of life, these are long-term development indicators. So you are using growth indicators to assess development outcomes. So certainly that gap is expected. So the idea is for growth to be inclusive. Growth that creates jobs, closes poverty gap, closes gender gap, and then provides access to public resources. So why GDP is growing slowly is because despite the effort of the government, other factors like insecurity, like food inflation, like challenges in accessing transport, energy costs, is not allowing the real GDP, the increase recorded in real GDP to impact on people, because the real GDP growth is coming from services, telecoms, and banking. So you see, as these few sectors are growing, it's not telling very significantly.
It's not the whole picture,
It's not the whole picture, essentially.
So you don't think, like the organized labor, for instance, when the NBS recently released some figures about the GDP growth, about unemployment coming down, you don't think they are fabricated? You think there's just a disconnection between nominal GDP and the reality on ground?
Yeah, so the concept is the National Bureau of Statistics has a methodology that they adopt to measure unemployment growth and changes in unemployment figure. So it depends on the population that was sampled, but over the years, and the National Bureau of Statistics have earned that trust in terms of being our nation's #1 data collection source. So I think maybe the data that was collected, maybe it's not for real time today's 2024. Maybe it's for four months back, 6 months back, or something of that sort. But it's important to understand that unemployment rate is different from total unemployment and then job creation. So it's just important to accept the data that the NBS has reported.
And do you understand the frustration and the uproar that accompanied the release of that report? Because some say, because it's a government agency, it is trying to pander to the administration to make it look like everything is going well, in the right direction.
Well, the NBS has credibility. They partner with a lot of agencies, international and local, even with CSOs, and they have people, data infrastructure across the nation that they use in collecting this data. So they collect data. Don't forget, it's the same NBS that give us data for inflation, the same NBS that give us data for unemployment. So if we trust the inflation data, they've been reporting the inflation has been increasing almost every month in the last 12 months. So if we can trust them on inflation, I think we just get the benefit of that on unemployment, because for us in economics, inflation data and unemployment data gives us a very good picture on what we call the Phillips curve. You use it to assess how monetary policy is performing vis-a-vis the real sector. So as inflation is growing, so it has been increasing over the years. What the NBS data shows on inflation, on unemployment, also seems to be tolerable.
Yeah. So let's talk about the other report, which has got a lot of people talking, scratching their heads. Unemployment coming down. How do you explain that in the current economic climate?
The economic explanation for unemployment coming down is that people are getting used to accepting temporary jobs as being employed. So before, the concept is people in informal sector will always fill the unemployment form and say, no, we are unemployed. When you ask them, people, POS person will say unemployed. The Mekose, Meyakara, everybody will say unemployed. The people working in food and beverage, waitresses will say unemployed. Transportation people will say unemployed. But as the reality is hitting on Nigerians,
people are settling for anything that they have right now.
Online taxi cab has job, waitress has job, housekeeping has job, and then accepting what they have as being employed. I think that's what explains it. So the only difference now is that the government will need to reach out to people like this so that they themselves will be captured in government employment database, so that they can begin to have access to credit, access to health insurance, and the access to the other things like housing scheme that people in the formal sector also have access to.
What do you think this particular experience tells us about this growing trust deficit that we have in the country, where, as you said, if NBS comes out today and says inflation is through the roof, it's at 40% now, Nigerians are keen to believe that, see, this is how bad, because it's closer to the reality that they live in day by day. But when it says GDP is going up, or the economy is slightly moving in the right direction, albeit slow, people are suspicious of this data, as is evident in the response of the Nigeria Labour Congress, for instance, who say they cannot accept this fabricated data. What does that say about the trust in government institutions that are supposed to churn out data that should inform government decision, government policies and programs? Well,
the Nigerian Labour Congress are one of the people or groups or stakeholders that are on the receiving side of government policy. When interest rate is high, they know, because it's affecting their cost of input. It's affecting the businesses they do. When exchange rate is not stable, they have the effects on them. When they are Nigerian Labour Congress that encompass Manufacturers Association of Nigeria and all of those organizations, they also know when there's multiple taxation, because they have members who are the ones actually paying these taxes. So they don't have to collect data, they just need to meet their members, and these members have albums of receipts that they pay as multiple taxes. So they're on the receiving side. So it's important for the NBS methodology, if it's not doing that already, to include or capture the organized labor in their methodology of going about how they measure inflation and unemployment. But I'm sure somehow by stakeholder consultation they do. But we are just saying that they should do that, even they should expand the rate at which they consult with stakeholders, especially in the manufacturing sector and in Nigerian labor in general. Because once data is out and the people who are being affected by poverty, cost of living, high prices of goods and services in the market, is the interpretation is that whatever government is telling them regarding the policy effort they are making, there will seem to be no trust or reliability from what government is saying.
Right. Important point to note there. Well, let's have a listen to the Commander-in-Chief and, of course, the first citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Ahmed Tinubu. He's in France for a state visit. And, of course, as always, the number one marketer of Nigeria right now. And he's trying to sell the idea that Nigeria is heading in the right direction with the right economic reforms, as well as the changing dynamics when it comes to the prosperity that awaits Nigeria if and when these reforms finally take effect. Here he is addressing not just the French president, but a group of investors in France. Have a listen.
We cannot but invest in one another's economy. As Nigerian financial sector, is involving in the France environment. Thank you for creating the conducive environment for them to flourish, and we are creating the same grant for investment in Nigeria economy for the French nationals. In the area of food security, it is a must. An hungry population is an unrestful population. And we hold the responsibility by all of us to put together a food security program for private sector investors to come in, invest, with the risk, the fears that they may have. We've been working on stabilizing the security system in Nigeria, and we are getting closer and closer. We are doing better now in the area of security. I can assure all the investors here that Nigeria is open for business. And I thank you for your collaboration. Vital to this is the education of our children. We have a vibrant youth population that is well educated and ready to be trained, skilled, and development of our economy. This, I will emphasize, that we need the French expert and investment to do more in this area to help develop our youth population. As your intelligence, to further de-risk the opportunity in solid mineral. We have this potential to diversify our economy. We have this responsibility that is unique to fighting terrorism. And no matter how much you invest in other African countries, you don't take Nigeria for a serious country and a partner in your crusade, you won't achieve the results. Nigeria is ready to partner with France so that we will have a very robust.
All right. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu there speaking to a delegation that was, of course, put together by the French government as part of his state visit to France. As you can hear, the president there giving assurances as well as guarantees about what is happening in the country as a result of the reforms that his administration is trying to implement. He talks about de-risking the economy so that investors can feel safe and bring their money into the country or bring their investment into Nigeria so that that prosperity that we've long been yearning for can be achieved at the end of the day. Well, join the conversation, join the panel as advertised is Engineer Yabagi and all expert and of course public affairs commentator. He's joined the conversation also, and I bet he's eager to begin his take on this one. So let's welcome you to the conversation and get your initial thoughts on what the president is saying. Clearly he's trying to project Nigeria in all the positive dimensions that he can, because things have to work, and much of it depends on the policies, the programs, and the direction of his administration. What are your 2 cents about what the president has been doing so far? A lot of people have been complaining about the travels. This is one too many, but what do you make of it?
Well, I think the president is right and on point, really, what he was telling Macron, in the sense that Nigeria represents the biggest part of Africa in terms of economic, social, political engagements. So France, again, this coming on the heels of what is happening, development between France and Senegal and Chad, and Mali, Niger, and all this is what is this sour relationship that is developing between those countries and France. So France really will find it very, very cheering, that the biggest country on the continent of Africa, is opening their doors for them to come in for economic development and things like that. But you know that France, they have this expansionist, or do we say their agenda?
Not so good relationship or
yes.
reputation.
Yeah, reputation, because we look at the history of what France, did with their colonies, the so-called colonies, and the fact that they did not, unlike the British, if you compare, they didn't do much for their countries in terms of economic development. They wanted to have them as their lapdogs, forever, and this is why I believe that. But they know that Nigeria cannot be, treated that way because of one, Nigeria has other ties, long ties with British, with America. We have very entrenched interests. They have entrenched interests in Nigeria.
Do you think that insulates any sort of overbearing influence that France may likely have as a result of our bilateral relationship?
Yes, certainly, because America will not, or Britain for that matter, will not just fold their arms and watch, France, take advantage of the attraction of Nigeria in terms of, like I said, potential. Like the president says, Nigeria is, of course, the biggest potential you can think of in terms of Africa. So, and then, like I said, we have entrenched. British has entrenched interest in Africa, in Nigeria in particular, and also America. And if you look at what is happening now with the BRICS, definitely, America also wants a situation where countries like Nigeria, continue to have a stronger relationship with them because of the fact that they want to ensure that dollar dominance in the global market, continues. And to do that, they would like as much as possible to pull, countries like Nigeria that are not yet full-fledged members of the BRICS, so that they will maintain that hegemony, if you like, in the international arena. So I believe Mr. President is on point with what he's telling Macron, and I believe that it's for us to really dictate the terms, because it cannot be done as it used to be on the terms of the West, France and what have you. Yeah. So we have the opportunity now, and that's what I think Mr. President is trying to capitalize on.
Speaking about France, it's a waning power, especially in this part of Sub-Saharan Africa, isn't it? We've seen what happened in Mali, in Niger, in Chad right now, diplomatic ties being cut, in Senegal, for instance. What is Nigeria risking by associating itself closely to France? Because Nigeria is and probably will always be the big brother to some of these much smaller countries. Economically we're big, politically we're big. Influentially, we also have that standing with some of these African countries. But do you think this closer tie with France, even if it makes economic sense, are we risking anything?
Well, certainly in international trade, in economic relations, partnership is always better than isolation. So Nigeria partnering with France or any other country, so long as it's being conceptualized from a strategic advantage point of view, we certainly have something to benefit. Because in international trade, what they are looking out for is to have a win-win situation. So, but marketing Nigeria to investors that just come to Nigeria, there's opportunity, without having a plan, a trade plan, remembering the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and the implications. So in other words, I hope that beyond this media interaction that is being aired, there will be a closed-door meeting where strategists on the Nigerian side will sit with the president and meet with the counterpart on the side of France, and then engage and negotiate in concrete terms. Let it not be that President travels, comes back with agreement, and the Ministry of Trade is not carried along, Ministry of Finance is not carried along, our 2025-2027 FSP strategies are not factored in, and then we bring these investors, and then by the time they start investing, they are crowding out our own local investors. So it's a good thing, that's my bottom line, but it needs to be done from a strategic advantage point of view. Beyond the media talk, there should be a point where strategic thinking takes place, whereby documents are signed and win-win situations are being considered, including the threats and the opportunities that are contained.
Yeah. Let's talk about the international travels, because he left on the same day the vice president left, and this is happening for the second time. And I suppose Nigerians are getting used to it. Nobody's complaining anymore that both the president and the vice president are not in the country physically. But the other question is, are we getting value for money for all these international trips, for the summits, for the bilateral meetings and everything? What is your sense of what we've gotten so far? When he came back from Brazil, or just before he came back from Brazil, the announcement was made about that deal that was signed. But just as Mr. Terfa was saying, it has to be strategic so that at the end of the day, it fits into our national agenda for economic recovery and all of these things. Do you think Nigerians are going to have been getting value for money for all of these international travels and engagements?
Well, I believe yes, because show up is very important, and even in the area of building your economy, marketing yourself. If you don't show up,
packaging, as they like to say.
Yes, packaging. So the fact that Mr. President, visits these countries, and of course, I don't think he just visits them. He visits them on programs, that are organized. I believe, I want to believe that you have some, people that must have gone before the president to, like what the gentleman here was saying, making sure that we have something to show. And at the end of the day, it is not just the
fanfare.
The fanfare that you see and what have you. But the president traveling, yes, it's important. Nigeria plays big, in the international arena. So we should be seen, as the president is pushing, the frontier of Nigerian reach. That's the way it should be, because we are not a small country, like you said. We have everything that qualifies us to play big in the international political arena, and the only way we can take advantage of what we have is if we are in the discussions. We pull our weight, and then making sure that things are done more or less, more on our terms than on the terms of the people that we are discussing. Like France, some of our businessmen have gone before this visit of Mr. President, like Boa. I know he has had a very strong relationship with France. And then you also saw UBA, they are opening their branches there. And then there are other businessmen that have ties, relationships with their French, businesses. So for Mr. President to go there is to add some clout, to whatever these businessmen are doing, and that's how it is done everywhere, so that your people, and I like it, because you see, when you go and it's only about government to government, which is important too, but when you allow your businessmen to really engage with these developed countries through their own businessmen, we get more than than if it's just government, because public servants, they are just there for the red tape,
the
things.
bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy and what have you. But to get delivery of what these, connections or these discussions are, you must bring in the business community, and that's why I think I commend the effort.
Right. Let's bring the conversation back home, because this week one particular story has dominated the headlines, and it's all about the tax reform bills. We've heard a lot of political talk of regional setbacks that could be realized as a result of the passage of this particular bill. For instance, the fighting has happened inside the chambers of the Nigerian Senate, inside the Green Chamber, and outside of it also, the governors are doubling down on how they do not agree with the contents of this particular bill. As an economist, knowing what you know about the bills What do you make of the arguments for and against these 4 crucial bills?
Well, the argument against the bill is coming on the strength of argument for the bills, because members of the National Assembly are concerned. Remember, the National Assembly members have 3 functions: lawmaking, representation, and oversight. Now, from oversight that they've been doing over the years, they know that Nigeria has a revenue challenge. And one way to raise revenue is to reform our tax system. Not to raise tax rates, but to reform tax system so that multiple agencies collecting taxes will be streamlined into one. Because by so doing, we'll be able to collect more than otherwise. To ensure that the tax net is expanded. Tax net means bringing more people that have been evading taxes into this pool where they can pay taxes. So by the time we do this, tax collection will be higher than it was, and which will now add to our revenue source. That is one point. Now, from their lawmaking function, that's what they're about to do now. The bills have been presented. It's only normal that it's presented first for first reading, it goes through second reading, then to committees, then to public hearing, then it comes back for third reading before they now do concurrence, Senate and House, and then transmit to the President for assent. Now, everything the National Assembly is doing right now is consistent with their function. Now, I said there are 3. One more is representation, and that representation is where their constituents come in. It's just normal that they reflect the concerns of their constituents. So the lawmakers are not doing the argument for or against simply because they don't like or like the bill, but they want to be sure that their constituents are carried along. Now, what is clear is that, remember, when under President Muhammadu Buhari from 2019, Nigeria introduced this issue of Finance Act, whereby the Finance Act is passed as a revenue plan for the Appropriation Act. But when President Tinubu GCFR came on board, he suspended the Finance Act. From that moment, it was clear that something around reform of taxes was coming, which was why he passed the executive order for the harmonization of tax. But executive order has its own limitation. The essence was to give room for tax system to be harmonized. So he created this Taiwo Idele-led committee, and they've done a lot of fantastic work in putting all these tax reform bills together. So the stage they are now, remember, just like the Finance Act is usually passed alongside or vis-a-vis or pari passu with the Appropriation Act, is the same reason why we are seeing this speed, why it looks as if there's a rush towards passing the bill. So it's important for the bill to be passed for its merits of raising more revenues. And then the argument against is why rushing? Don't forget to interact with stakeholders so that their concerns will also be reflected by way of making adjustment to the bill.
And in talking about the speed with which the bills are getting, the governor of Borno State, Professor Babagana, had this to say. He said he criticized the speed in which the bill is progressing through the legislative process, drawing comparisons to the petroleum industry bill, which took nearly 2 decades to pass. I'm not sure the analogy sits well with Nigerians, because I know lawmaking is a very tedious process, but 20 years, my goodness, I don't think that's a very good example. But what do you make of it? Governors like him are quite vocal about how they do not agree with what's happening. Plus, they say that this is going to undermine the capacity of the states going forward, so much so that he said they will be unable to pay salaries and perform as states. What do you make of the argument, especially coming from some of the northern stakeholders, the governors, the Arewa Consultative Forums, the Northern Elders Forum, and all of the likes, who have 1 or 2 criticisms about the reform bills?
You know, the tax reform bill has a political, social, and economic undertone. In the sense that, yes, you perhaps will end up having what you would term as efficiency in terms of revenue collection and what have you. And perhaps that may translate into a faster economic growth of the country. But then you talk about how effective would it be in terms of uniting the country, in terms of ensuring that you have stability, because the components that is Nigeria, that have different dynamics, you know, especially when you look at it from the economic point of view. The dynamics you find in the southern part of the country is not the same as what you find in the northern part of the country. And this is why the northern governors in particular, the traditional rulers, you know, and also some of the senators are not really comfortable with the implications, you know, of the reforms that are coming. But again, look at it from another point of view, is that they said necessity is the mother of invention. Okay, if you are faced with these challenges and you have to, because we are a country, isn't it? And he's the president, and it's not just like any other president. He's the president that is hands-on on issues, and he wants to make sure that within the time that he has something to show, And again, you can interpret it to say that, well, he's doing this to favor, his own side, where he comes from. Yes, because that side he comes from has been more efficient in terms of their economic, the productivity, and we have been the Northerners now. I'm saying we've been taking things for granted too much, So this is something to jolt us up, because the North has potential to surpass whatever is happening in the South today. Because if it is population we have, if it is talent we have, if it is potential and opportunities that you talk about, we have agriculture potential, oil and gas potential, solid minerals potential. Anything you talk about, you have more of it in the North. So what is lacking is that aggressiveness, which is lacking.
Do you think
so
the criticism and the frustration they're expressing is misguided, because they could easily look into the mirror and realize, we could fix the industrialization problem and all of the factories that have become moribund over the past 20 years in northern Nigeria.
Exactly, so that you become productive centers too, so that you can now also take advantage of the VAT, which you said has been lopsided in terms of the sharing formula. So what I'm saying is that it's up to Tinubu to rely only on the efficiency and then sacrifice his political interest, because this could also make North to be more uncomfortable with him. And then he has 2027, isn't it? The governors can come together and say, well, if this is what you want to do, we also have a way that we can respond.
Right, and of course the governor of Borno State was not shy of mentioning that, where he talked about the North giving the president 60% support for his victory in 2023. And I suppose he's also referencing how that could be crucial in deciding where that support goes to in 2027. But we have to put these 4 bills on a scale, the good versus the bad, or at least it's negative.
No, there'll be trading. I'm sure there'll be give and take.
If I can say this, so the bills. See, we need to understand it from the context of our economy. If there are no economic activities, there will be nothing to tax.
Exactly.
So to that extent, I agree with the engineer. Every sector of the country needs to revive the economy so that the production will pick up. Because remember, taxes act on economic activities. Exactly. Now, however, these 4 bills, beyond the tax, seeks to conduct a reform on the fiscal space in general. And it also addresses not just the production side, but also the consumption side. For example, if you use a typical classroom example of kola nuts, for example, Southwest may be farming kola nuts the most. But if this tax reform is to apply on kola nuts, North will get the highest revenue from kola nut tax. So that's the kind of thinking that went into this tax reform bills you are saying. So it's not just punishing. The aim is not to punish consumption or production, but rather to reward where consumption happens. So if, for example, maybe a particular local government has the highest number of cows in Kano, but another local government within Kano consumes it the most, that local government will get the tax that comes from consuming cows the most. So the tax reform bill is complete in its scheme.
And if you have to draw parallels with some of the best international practices, how would these 4 bills pair against?
If I can talk in 10 seconds before engineer comes in terms of best practice, international practices, we have too many revenue collecting agencies. Best practice has one. This bill proposes Nigeria Revenue Service. So, and remember, it will collect taxes on behalf of local government and states. So but that does not mean that the tax will not go back to the local government and the states. Rather, by making it just one revenue collecting agency, the state of Nigeria as a country will collect more taxes, and these states will get more in terms of the sharing.
Do you think there's mistrust?
If they have done otherwise?
There's mistrust from the state governments, for instance.
Maybe shall I address?
No, just one thing, because I have a bigger question for him.
Yeah.
Do you think there's mistrust, and that's why the governors don't like the federal agency collecting tax on their behalf?
I know from readings and from many interviews that the chairman of the tax committee reform gives that this committee was constituted, remember, almost a year back, since August 2023. A lot of consultation has taken place with Nigerian Governors Forum, with different stakeholders. So I'm sure the committee gave all the stakeholders room to make input. Maybe they just need to pay more attention to what the governors are saying, to hear them out, because governors have the mandate of their people. So they hear what the governors are saying and then just make an effort to reflect what the governors are saying into the tax reform bill. But what we shouldn't do as a country is to throw away the baby with the bathwater with these 4 reforms. But you cannot ignore Nigerian Governors Forum. It's too big of a stakeholder to ignore in our political space.
I mean, clearly, they have, even APC governors are some of the loudest voices against these particular bills. You did talk about some horse trading happening. How do you see the president navigating this? Because we know his antecedents in Lagos, how very effective or efficient they have been with tax collection, for instance, how they've turned things around. Clearly, they're trying to do it at a much larger scale with these 4 bills. How do you see this panning out with all the pushback that he's been getting?
No, you see, it will only deepen the conversation, and then going forward, definitely, because this is the democracy, isn't it? Mr. President will have to accommodate some of the views that the opponents of the bills may have. It is like he says, well, you're not going to throw away the baby with the bathwater, no, but definitely. And I'm sure Mr. President himself is aware that he has to make some concessions as he go along, so that for political reasons also, because government is not all about profit and profit. It's about goodwill too, So, and for you to have that goodwill, you need to allow people to also have a feeling that they are being carried along, that their views matter, and so that's why. I believe that it will, at the end of the day, be something that will serve, the interests of Nigeria. I have an experience, of this. That's why I support the initiative by Mr. President. In the oil and gas sector, there was a time that I carried out a study on behalf of 90, and then I was querying the mode of collection of royalties by then DPR, which is now NEPR. I said, why should an agency of government, that has the responsibility of licensing and then maybe and things
regulation,
like that, be in charge of collection of taxes, of levies, of royalties, and then I did a proposal really to the FRS chairman that time, and she was very happy about it. I know she pushed it, but of course. At that time, the oil and gas people, they know what they were doing with the, collecting that big chunk of the revenue, because almost 20-something% of the revenue from oil is in royalty. So, and they are collecting it. So that's why I'm saying, yes, there's a lot of benefits that will accrue to the country as a whole if we have a unified, system of collection of revenue, so that you don't have too many leakages, as you have today, and that is very important too. And it also does something, it makes people to become more responsible as a citizen. If you are now, if you now see that if linkage is being established between an average citizen and the wealth of the country, by way of you paying something and then and that the governors themselves. Now they know that it's not going to be business as usual, because whatever you are getting, it has to be something that you are entitled to. You can't just be in your state and then create some other agencies that collects money which nobody accounts for, and then you can do whatever.
They're talking about scrapping some 50 nuisance tax and levies,
yes,
so that they can streamline all of this.
Exactly.
So, let's just pass this message along to our viewers who will be familiar that today we're giving you an opportunity to be a part of the conversation. So if you have a thought, a comment, if you feel like weighing in on the conversation, feel free to give us a call. We'd love to get your take, your opinion on the conversation tonight on the program. The number is showing on your TV screen. A quick reminder, rules of engagement: please ensure that your volume, your TV set volume is turned down, and please be as articulate and as concise as you can be with your thoughts, so that we can allow for a variety of opinions to come on the program. Let's talk about one of the biggest news of the week also, which is the reactivation of the Port Harcourt Refinery. I will have the oil expert take first dip on this one. I mean, obviously, the celebrations were expected, right? However, controversy soon came after. Some of the communities in Port Harcourt say, listen, what happened was just for show. This was old product that have been in the refinery and there's nothing new going on. The NNPC clapped back to say that that's not true, and so on and so forth. Well, as someone who understands the industry, what do you make of this particular development? But before I get your reaction, I think we have our first caller on the program. So let's speak to our first caller. Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Welcome to Daily Politics. Who's on the line and where are you calling from?
Thank you. My name is Abdullahi. I'm calling from Gombe.
Good to have you join us on the program. How's Gombe this evening?
Gombe is fine. Oh.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to ask one of the guests in the studio that is making a contribution on the new tax reform bill, the issue of value-added tax. I think this government, why are they in a hurry to make sure that this bill is passed into law? If you look at Petroleum Industry Act bill, spent more than 10 years from the National Assembly, and then they conducted a public hearing before they passed the bill into law. But look at this one. The federal government is always in a hurry without even conducting a public hearing. They just want to pass it into law. And look at the price of goods and services, how it is skyrocketing. There is no country in the world that is facing these serious challenges that Nigeria is facing and is trying to increase VAT. And how is the government going to monitor the consumption tax? For example, if you are producing soft drink in Lagos and you take 50 or 20 trailers to one of the states in the north, how can the federal government knows the number of people or the quantity of the soft drink is being consumed in the north? I think the federal government need to give ample time so that they can listen to the stakeholders, to conduct a public hearing, to have an input from Nigerians, to know, since we are practicing a democracy, it's a government of the people by the people, we are protecting the interests of the masses. If the government can have a listening ears to listen to the masses so that they can implement a policy that is going to be a people-friendly policies, not the policy that is going to bring more harsh to the people, not the policy that is going to reduce the purchasing power of Nigerians. So I think the government need to listen to Nigerians so that they can allow people to make an input, whether this bill is going to be passed or people kick against it. So that is the best thing the federal government can do. For now, thank you. Have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you so much for that take. It's safe to say that this is the most interested I've seen Nigerians in relation to a boring conversation as tax, for instance. Because but also if you can just quickly respond to that very briefly.
So first of all, thank you, caller from Gombe. Public hearing comes after second reading. Exactly. So now that the Senate has done second reading, public hearing will follow. So that's just to let you know that the National Assembly did not skip second public hearing. It will hold after the second reading. When the House of Rep also, when they pass the bill for the second reading, it will go to the second for public hearing. Then regarding the tax, the aim is not to increase value-added tax. Rather, the aim is to expand the tax net so that people who earn a certain income, high income earners, begin to pay appropriate tax. Then, like you said, how will the consumption and production be tracked? The bill also comes with something they call fiscalization. Fiscalization will anchor on financial inclusion. The phone you and I are using, everybody now has one phone or the other to ensure that payments or receipts and payments are being documented so that everybody knows what is being generated and how receipt flows. And it's on that basis that these taxes will be generated. So the bill in general, the rush is that you are seeing, it's not because it's being hastened. This thing started since August 2023. But remember, like I said earlier, there's Finance Act that accompanies the Appropriation Act every year. It has been suspended since August 2023. So meaning if we pass our 2025 Appropriation Act right now, we are planning on expenditure but not thinking about the revenue. So it's important for the Finance Act, which is being rebutted through this tax reform bills in general to be passed as soon as possible, so that it will just kick off with the 2025 fiscal year, having a very clear revenue path and a clear expenditure projection as well.
All right. I think that is clear enough, at least to drive home the point. Let's speak to our next caller then. Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to the program. Who is on the line and where are you calling from?
Yes, I'm Mohammed from Jos.
Mohammed from Jos.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mohammed.
Yes, I have listened to your argument and conversation with you. I've been following the piece. To my understanding, I would not say it's a bad one, but the way and manner has been testing of me, at least it has created national interest, condemnation, support, and other things. Ideally, the National Assembly has to slow down, in my understanding, so that people, I know, once the bill is in the first and second reading, there's no problem. The public hearing will come in the church after the second reading. But even then, the way and manner of the bill may have a good intention, but Nigerians have to take it very well before the National Assembly can quickly pass it into law.
Yeah.
You remember, if you take the bill deeply, you will understand that it's trying to tax, the taxpayer is going to be heavy on, particularly on the big companies. What will be the question when they are taxed, when they have higher tax? What will be the question in terms of their value, in terms of their production, in terms of what they produce, their prices? And that will have an effect in the economy because they will sell their community or other things higher based on what the taxman carries out to. That's the understanding. So let the federal government, let the National Assembly slow down and keep it. Let everybody partake and let out a holistic agreement that is going to be a value for the whole country.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mohammed from Jos, for calling in on the program. And I think as Mohammed was making his points and as some of the slides we're showing, I think one thing is fairly certain, that there is a need for adequate awareness and education, because I can tell that some people have not taken enough time to take a look at the contents of the bill, because as he was alluding to there, part of the provision is to lower the threshold, or perhaps increase the threshold where if businesses are not making enough money, they don't get taxes. They don't get taxed for that. Small businesses are also catching a huge break where they don't get to bear the burden of that. But I think it's an ongoing conversation. Just to comment on that, and then the previous question about the Port Harcourt refinery controversy. Yeah.
Well, about the bill, like the gentleman here has said, when the bill passes the second reading, it is now for the committee to go line by line of what the bill is all about, and then also go for the public hearing, so that people would now have the opportunity, like they are saying, to deliberate, to air their views, and then of course the committee would assemble all these views, and then come up with something that they believe will sit well with the citizens of the country. So it's not yet a done deal. No, it's but yes. The agency that is visited on this bill is to underscore the importance of it, from the perspective of Mr. President. And I think if you look at it critically, really, Nigeria needs to get out of the rut, meaning that, where we are, it's like we are not moving forward, and a lot is left out, And then like the bill, you see, there's no VAT on food, school, education and health, rent and things like that, which is where the lower income,
taxes
earners. Yes, exactly.
On personal income tax for
exactly.
Those in the
from 30, to 25%, and then a lot has been done. So it's targeting the segment of the society that can afford, really to pay. But the argument
says they are taxing prosperity, not poverty.
Exactly. And then but I think the issue is that of sharing. The sharing. What is going to the state. But even that, I think it's been adjusted. I think, and then they'll get some concession. And then
we have just 2 minutes to spare. Or
then you talk about
the
Port Harcourt. I think Port Harcourt refinery. I would rather put the blame, squarely at the doorstep of Mr. President. Because before Mr. President, came to power, we all know the endemic corruption that is in the oil and gas sector. And everybody expected that Mr. President will not only deal with CBN and leave NNPC, as if nothing is happening in that sector. And which is, in fact, if you ask most people, they will tell you that the source of corruption, the problems we're having in this country, talk about the subsidy on petroleum products, talk about the subsidy on Naira, it's all emanated from the corruption in the oil and gas sector. So why has Mr. President not touched that sector? Why has not it been rejigged? There's a need, an urgent.
He's satisfied with their performance.
No, we are not. Citizens are not.
But he is.
But citizens are not. That's why you are having, this shameful show on Port Harcourt Refinery. It is element. It is this Edoram or something. That is running the element Burkemka, which was privatized, given to that. They are the one that are helping, the so-called old section of the Port Harcourt Refinery that they say is producing now. It is their plant that the Port Harcourt Refinery or the Port Harcourt is using to blend and then telling Nigerians, fooling Nigerians that the refinery is now running. The corruption is
that a fact or is that a suspicion?
It's not a suspicion, it's a fact.
Okay.
And NNPC even told us that yes, they are blending. Right. They are using that company's plant to blend. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you give these refineries to private sector to run, like you did with the petrochemical, and it's so efficient that now the NPCL is claiming the credit of the efficiency of that organization. Right. So I am saying that Mr. President needs to revisit NNPC and then do some reforms. In that sector. Right. That's why otherwise we'll never get out of this problem.
20 seconds.
Yes, 20 seconds or less. Yeah. So crude oil price and quantity are very important macroeconomic benchmark for our 2025 fiscal year. It's important, and the 2025-2027 MTEF and FSP has made a higher projection for crude oil production. It's important to get all these refineries working so that we can meet our crude oil production expectation, so that we can get the revenue we require. And addressing these challenges is important to achieving that target. Otherwise, we'll be far from it.
Okay. It's left to say that there's a lot of dots and T's that need to be crossed, and well, let's see what comes next. Terfa Abraham, thank you so much for joining the conversation. As always, appreciate you for the analysis. Engineer Yabagi, thank you so much, as always, for obliging us and for being on the program tonight. And as always, thank you so much for your time and company. Thank you for calling in. For those of you who are unsuccessful, we'll give you yet another opportunity on Sunday evening with Sunday Politics. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on Daily Politics. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome to 30